Hello there, and welcome back to War Thunder, to the first video of War Thunder patch 2.0. And as you can see, it's a long video and we have a lot of things to discuss. So get yourself a cup of coffee, or more appropriately a cup of tea, some snacks, make yourself comfortable, and let's enjoy the ride on the one and only, the first ever completed and commissioned all big gun battleship, the HMS Dreadnought herself. Now, before we go on to talk about every single little detail that this exciting ship brings with it, this is a single battle. That is what I want to make clear. And please watch it for the entire duration, and please let me talk you through all the interesting topics. First of all, 30,000 subscribers. I just reached it yesterday, and that is an absurd number. So I hope that you watched my 30,000 subscriber special video with the one and only, the HMS FE 4005, where I included music from the musician called AlamanderArts, linked in the description down below. Please be sure to check out his channel and give him a subscription, because I think he thoroughly deserves it if you are a true music lover and you love some metal. The next thing is that 30,000 subscribers is a really absurd number. So for the 7.5 years that I've been with War Thunder, and 4.5 years of making YouTube videos myself, inspired by many other people, I've come across several different stages of War Thunder. I've played the game when there were only aircraft, then I've seen the rise and kind of fall of tanks, and the same here with ships. And I made hundreds upon hundreds of videos overall, with 99% being about War Thunder. In that time, what have I reached? Well, you know, I made over 1,200, 1,300 videos. Again, 30,000 subscribers. I managed to acquire 1,700 vehicles. I am now at 2,031 days of continuously logging in. I think that shows some dedication. What does this have to do with this ship? Well, I've also played all the ships throughout all the nations, and with the new dreadnoughts throughout all the nations, naval nations except Italy, I've played roughly half of all the ships. And that gives me a very first early rough impression of what they are like. And they are, as expected, really powerful units. The armor really matters, the firepower matters as well, but they are slow and very vulnerable to air attacks. That's the summary of all the warships. So the HMS Dreadnought has a very interesting story, and many aspects around it are best covered by the ever awesome Drachinifels. I'll link you another video about this ship in particular in the description down below. Be sure to check it out as well. So, all big gun battleships, that is definitely what the community requested. Not many people wanted to play patrol boats with those puny 20mm or even down to machine gun class of weaponry. No, people wanted big guns. They wanted massive firepower. They wanted to command the sea. And Gaijin listened, and they implemented ships. The Gaijin way. So with that, well, we have to discuss many aspects. At first, please, this is not a rant. This is not hating on anything. This is just my observation. This is my experience. And I will also read through all your comments that you hopefully do, and let me know what you think about this patch so far, your early impressions, fighting against, fighting alongside, and fighting yourself in with dreadnoughts of the various different nations. I'll read all the comments. So, the HMS Dreadnought itself. Let's talk about this ship in particular for a moment, in-game that is. The ship has 10 12-inch guns in 5 twin turrets, and there are 2 of them wing-mounted, so your broadside is 8 guns. 12-inch is 305mm, so that is 1 inch more than the previously biggest guns in the game mounted on the Admiral Graf Spee. This is a more or less standardized caliber for the first wave of dreadnoughts throughout all the nations. Some nations have more and some have less of those guns. They are obviously equipped with different types of ammunition, and I think that I'll make some stat comparison soon. And I think that this ship has one big downside. It has a broadside of 8 guns. That is not the worst, but also definitely not the best being 12. However, what is definitely the worst is the 40-second reload. That is a considerable sized oof. Because, for example, the Germans have with their 2 dreadnoughts, the 11-inch gun arm and the 12-inch gun arm, also 8 guns for a broadside. However, they have only 20-second reload, so twice the DPM. That is considerable, especially if you want to slap some cruisers. The US battleship has 30-second reload, but therefore has also 10 guns, so also significantly higher DPM. And the Russians, they have 33-second reload with 12-inch guns and more destructive ammunition. So you can see that the HMS Dreadnought is not really the best dreadnought out there, but it is still a serious threat for any sort of cruiser. And the HMS Colossus, where it can bring to bear actually all 10 of its 12-inch guns, because they have an echelon arrayment, so you can bring your 10 12-inch guns to bear with some cross-stack firing, which is very interesting. Also has 40-second reload. Then there are the secondaries. They are definitely not amongst the best. Whereas other nations' dreadnoughts have higher caliber guns, 130mm to 150, 152mm. The HMS Dreadnought has only 4-inch guns. So, no, actually only 76mm guns. So we have overall 20 3-inch guns, 76mm. So that will chew through destroyers and patrol boats, but versus other cruisers or somewhat armed ships in general, that is not really cutting it. The anti-aircraft defense is, well, it doesn't exist. That's really the point. So we have kind of, in the game so far, some of the most extreme form of rock, paper, scissors that you can imagine. So the gameplay hasn't changed, and this is also one of those aspects that I just want to cover. The dreadnoughts, the battleships in general, just eats cruisers alive. They can deal with multiple cruisers, but they take their fair share of time to finish off a cruiser because of the lackluster DPM. But they can certainly take the damage. Even showing full broadside, it's not safe to pen such a dreadnought, even at medium range, with even the most powerful heavy cruiser guns, with the exception of the Admiral Graf Spee. I'll make a separate video about that ship because it's extremely interesting how it fits in that meta. So there is also a very funny bug. I'm not quite sure if you saw it, but the wing-mounted turret actually. The guns looked through the superstructure. I couldn't fire, but the gun was actually in the superstructure anyway. So the ship is also slow. As you can see, 35 kilometers per hour, and that is fully upgraded. So first kill on, funnily enough, the almighty Admiral Graf Spee. And we just continue our way into the close quarters fight. That is not what I want to do, but what I have to do. Back to the rock, paper, scissors. So you can defeat cruisers, and cruisers defeat destroyers and other cruisers, and destroyers then chew up any sort of patrol boat. You are not the very most effective ship to deal with patrol boats, but you can do it, but it's not what people want, right? And so the thing is, when an enemy just gets out there and caps and makes the battleship fight irrelevant, when it comes to the other game modes where there are multiple caps, he can get into a plane and then you're completely defenseless. So they can drop all the torpedoes, they can drop all the bombs on you, strafe you repeatedly, and annoy the hell out of you. That doesn't mean that they are safe there to destroy you. In fact, I found the dreadnoughts even surprisingly sustainable to those attacks. Obviously, that has to do with the torpedo size, the amount of torpedoes and or bombs, etc. that hit you on the special places. I think in the future people will adapt and the meta will also change, because at the moment I just saw, I guess, 2 other dreadnoughts so far. Obviously people on day number 1 are busy grinding those ships with the cruisers, so you have plenty of targets and not all that much serious opposition. And there is something about dreadnoughts that I really like, where there are those slow advancing menace, where they have those seriously big guns that do not really care about cruiser armor all that much and just have a heavy punch. The other thing is that those guns have, or the shells rather, have a surprising lack of muzzle velocity, and also they drop their speed considerable. So something like an Admiral Graf Spee is easier to aim and at least straddle the target at longer ranges, because the shells are better, higher muzzle velocity, and they are also equipped with a ballistic cap, so they retain their muzzle velocity longer, or their speed longer in general. Now, why does this matter? Because I just have to get good. I just have to adapt with the salvos. There is still a lot of... Oh, that's beautiful. That's beautiful. So you have to just adapt to this. So this is why this video is not a final verdict. I guess at this point you have emptied your first cup of tea and you're really asking yourself, well, how should this continue for another 16, 17 minutes? Well, I'm not quite sure at this point as well. And that is one of the problems, because the gameplay is really two-dimensional. The gameplay can get insanely boring. Sure, this is what people have requested, but I guess people also imagined a completely different meta, a completely different playstyle. And the maps, the game modes, the challenges, everything around naval forces hasn't actually changed. And the naval tech tree split was also more or less, well, cosmetic, to be honest. In the final stages, ships are still very much compressed, and you still have to fight cruisers in your destroyers. You still have to fight the dreadnoughts with your cruisers. And just imagine that you are this Russian premium guy that just bought for a hilarious amount of golden eagles that Soviet premium cruiser, and now all that you see with what is one of the best light cruisers, to be honest, dreadnoughts. And you cannot really hope to damage them seriously or win a fight against them. So it's only up to you to dodge and then just take the punishment and get the Silver Lines and RP therefore. I also appreciate that Gaijin has more or less doubled the Silver Line income, which was urgently needed. Does this make you rich? No. But it is at least one step in the right direction. So we get another kill on the Admiral Hipper that we punch down to 4% health. And as you can see, I cannot fire forward, although some of the guns are loaded, ready to fire. And that has to do with the life rafts being in the way. So this is then the level of detail Gaijin has gone through to make sure that the shells are not comically going through a life raft on your ship. So you have to angle, and then you can eventually fire. Just look at the left-mounted turret. How long it takes us to finally get the shot off. And this is on top of the slow turret rotation speed, the only 8-gun broadside, and the 40-second reload. So you can imagine why close quarters this ship isn't really the greatest hero. And they were never really built to deal with hordes of cruisers. They were never really built to fight close quarters. What you then kind of define close quarters. But they were not really designed to fight between the islands. But this is where the objective lies. I have to destroy the AI ships And while this is easily possible with destroyers in those confined waters, with cruisers it's already a bit more challenging. And then you just lack, you know, to turn away, to angle in, to quickly escape. Once you're in the fight, you're in the fight for good, and either you win or you just die. That is the gameplay. So then we have to compare, obviously, the civil line income versus cruisers and versus destroyers. I think patrol boats and destroyers are kind of good with the civil line increase, but if you just don't get the kills, if you just don't manage to get the results, if you lose and if you don't have a premium account, you're making very little money despite all the changes and improvements, because the teams are still small. I predicted the following: if no serious changes to the gameplay and map design, etc. are done, then we will see just a short spike in terms of players to grind the Dreadnoughts, to maybe try them out for a couple of battles, to be thoroughly disappointed, and then just play tanks and planes again. And this is the fate that I want to prevent to happen to naval forces. But, well, Gaijin being Gaijin, they may have listened to us, but they didn't really do the necessary steps to make the Dreadnoughts entertaining and fun and desirable, and making therefore a kind of growth of the naval forces community, which Gaijin claims is a requirement for decompressing the battle ratings. Just to illustrate how bad the compression is, all the Dreadnoughts, with the exception of one, which is formerly a battle cruiser, have a battle rating of 6.7. You can meet 5.0 ships. There are quite a few destroyers, and especially the first early, mostly stock light cruisers that you can get in the tech tree. And then you have to fight Dreadnoughts. You really don't have a chance. And there are not enough players, so you get up tiered all the time. And I brought this forward, and it was not addressed. Now, what could be done to improve this current status that I think is worthy of improving? Well, the battleships still spawn with cruisers. The battleships, or Dreadnoughts, still have ridiculously short combat distances. And we still get the same maps that were originally designed for patrol boats. How is this ever gonna work? Also, the battleships are still, in many battles, completely irrelevant for the outcome of the match itself. Because a patrol boat caps all the stuff. And that's it. So you might have fun shooting up other Dreadnoughts and mostly other cruisers, especially in the next few days. But you cannot really influence with your big ship, with all those big guns, the outcome of the battle, regardless how good of your aim is, regardless how many kills you get. Because at some point you have to leave the ship and just fight the battle in a patrol boat, which the community really liked the change, that there was a naval tech tree split, which, to be honest, is more of a cosmetic change. The grind has been lessened in some cases, and that is a big plus point. I'll be honest here. I didn't expect that the requirements to get to the top is now only a quarter, but that also tells you how ridiculous the changes are and how bad the civil line income was in order for Gaijin to be forced to double it at this point. So, Dreadnoughts. They are fantastic weapon systems, I'm gonna be honest. And I can't wait to see more of the other second, third generation and eventually super Dreadnoughts to appear in the game. And then modern battleships, battle cruisers, to reenact some of the battles that historically took place, you know. And we already have quite a lot of ships in the game that would make for some fantastic footage. Mentioning here Drachinifel again, you know, to literally illustrate what the ships looked like. And, you know, you don't have kind of this same feeling of ships in other games. Well, the Warships is completely arcade style and doesn't have the same damage model. It doesn't have the same pacing. Ships are artificially boosted, and their artillery sometimes is very lackluster with the lack of accuracy and DPM, and then you just get burned down by cruisers. Here you eat cruisers alive if you have somewhat decent good aim and you know where to shoot and how to lead, and also how to angle your ship and avoid torpedo spreads, etc., etc. So powerful but boring. That's really it. It's really very much two-dimensional. I think now you have emptied your second cup of coffee or tea, and now you're really eagerly looking at those snacks. Talking about patrol boats. No, bad jokes aside, despite how bad it is in certain aspects, despite how disappointed I am in the balancing aspect, the compression, etc., to be able to get my hands on those ships and to fight with them and to shoot the guns, there's just something about it. Despite all the flaws, despite all the issues, there's something about it that brings me back to play this. And you could say, yeah, it's like a train wreck you can't look away from, but it's more than this, really, honestly. And yeah, I have to get, used to the meta that we're now in. I have to find the best spots for my dreadnoughts, and obviously get used to the individual capabilities of the various different dreadnoughts, because they all have their strengths and weaknesses. Some are obviously better suited for the meta than others. I'm thinking here about the German brawlers. I'm thinking here about the glass cannons that are the Russian battleships. Not quite sure about the Japanese ones though. The lack of ammo, the lack of reload, the lack of guns, especially the battlecruiser with only 4 of those guns. That is bad, but then again you have better secondaries and a bit better speed. Does this really make up for it? I think I have to learn quite a lot. I have to relearn the meta, and that is fascinating by itself. I see what the Gaijin dev team tried to do. They just didn't accomplish their target, I guess. And whatever happens next, I'm kind of curious about it. So here I just finally made it into the middle of the combat zone, so to speak. At any point I could get jumped by a patrol boat. At any point a plane could come in for a revenge kill or for just a YOLO drop with a big bomb. Talking about P8. The Germans with their Fritz X or their 1,800 kilogram Satan bombs. Lots of planes, especially the US and Americans with their torpedo bombers, where they have up to 3 torpedoes, and you just can't do anything against turning into them or trying to slow down, but you're so big, clumsy, and don't have the greatest response. It's quite difficult. Also, you always have to constantly look around. You have to dig into an enemy ship with your weapons, but at the same time you must be constantly aware of your surrounding. You need to be in charge of the main armament and the secondaries. You have to toggle your gunners. You have to know which enemy is behind which island, what kind of ammunition that you load. You have to think a few steps ahead. That is challenging and in its own way fun. It's just literally not everybody's cup of tea, and I respect this. And I respect many opinions, but to have an opinion doesn't mean that it's true, right? To have an opinion doesn't mean that you are really interested in this. People wanted big ships, and here they are. The question is if this is what people really had in mind when they wanted bigger ships. Eventually we will get there with Yamato, Bismarck, Iowa, and all other historical and iconic ships, King George V, etc. And I can't wait to see how this plays out. As long as we are spawning 8 kilometers apart. Big ships won't work. You must not get caught in a traffic jam right at the start. You must be able to just angle your ship to maximize your armor protection, open up the distance. What we need is that big ships and their influence matters on the outcome of the battle. That requires map rework, that requires objective rework. Also, despite the despite the civil line increase, in many cases outright doubling the income, it's not enough, especially when it comes to RP and the stock grind. And also, the compression is just still a massive problem. The thing is, this has been brought forward by not just me, but also other content creators like Stug, which I highly recommend, by the way. Link in the description down below. Many suggestions have been made, and Gaijin listened, but they didn't really make the necessary steps to rework the entire game, which at this point is more than desperately needed. And this battle that I played is the best one that I've ever managed to get. With the assists, with the kills, with the winning. And you can see how slow the ship is. The ship just doesn't have the speed to go to places, especially when it needs to play with its speed and angling and going forward and backwards and keeping a distance to survive by itself, to maybe hide behind anti-aircraft destroyers and or cruisers, which, you know, again, back to the rock paper scissors system is not that easy. I know that this is not an easy task to accomplish. I know that this is not what I guess is a dream scenario for any game developer. And I know that by design, Naval Forces is a more or less two-dimensional playstyle. But the experience doesn't have to be two-dimensional. It definitely can be better. And I've seen it in the past when things were more fun, more attractive, and then things were changed not in the best way, but instead of reverting them, Gaijin kind of doctored around on them and not always made it better, let's put it that way. And there are so many bugs and issues in the game that you have to know how to work around it or outright accept it. Are you still listening? Are you still here, by the way? I'm still watching the video. I try my best here, but just to get guns on target, just to have a target in the first place, this is very often out of the range of such a ship, because it's spawning in the location that it is, because it's so slow and clumsy, and because obviously small ships don't want to get shot by big ships. So the first thing that they do is to try to seek cover behind islands, behind other ships where then cannot lock onto them. And also, not everybody that has good AA is really interested in escorting you, because then you are a prime target for enemy ships that then, you know, want to shave off one of the first layers of protection from that desired target that is Dreadnought. Now, the meta will change in the next couple of days, because people will get their hands on the Dreadnoughts. And so the Dreadnought versus Dreadnought fight is then probably one of the more desirable things in the game. And maybe then the ships will feel completely different, maybe more powerful, maybe new aspects open up. But as far as first impressions go, I've told you, Gaijin, multiple times years ago that this is probably not gonna work. And to be honest, those ships really feel like thrown on top of a big compression pile, just pressing further down. This can't be the answer to all the problems. And one funny thing is, Gaijin says that they require more people to play this so that they can decompress. The problem is, we have a global pandemic. Never ever have been there more people to play this game. So the chance was kind of wasted multiple times. And look at this, for a half an hour of gameplay, just short of 90,000 civilians and 14,000 RP. With a premium account, with a very successful battle, 9 assists and 11 kills. There is room for improvement. So, I hope you finished your cup of coffee and your cup of tea and your snacks, because that's it for me today. So thanks for watching, thanks for listening. I hope you enjoyed this first impressions. Give it a like with it, subscribe if you want to see more. Let me know your opinion and your experience around dreadnoughts, the naval meta, and everything else that comes to your mind. And we'll see each other on the battlefields, in the skies, and on the waves of War Thunder.